and the effect would take all of the system in its grip. Why would they come down here then? Was it arrogance or intimidation? Or was it simply the fact that they needed to land to retrieve the devices that Melias and company had found? They didn't think they could be stopped, so it didn't matter if they were seen. But they were wrong. Melias and the crew of the Goose knew how to combat them, more than anyone in the galaxy. He didn't make it in time. He knew he wouldn't, but still, the closer he had gotten, the more hope had begun to blossom within him. Now, however, he looked up in horror as the massive ship settled over the top of the tallest building. When it finally stopped, he knew what was about to come, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Skidding to a stop just beyond the outskirts of the town by a small hovercraft repair shop, Melias frantically switched his comms back on. "Everyone, activate your noise dampeners now!" He hoped they had the time to do so, because barely a few seconds after the words left his mouth, the device roared from the Lightbringers' ship and sank into his bones. The air reverberated with the force of it, shaking air and earth. He thought the building windows would blow out, but the sound was not that strong in the physical sense, even though it hit him with a blow. Melias had experienced the full power of the device before, when he had volunteered to have one tested on him so they could learn how to use it. It had been the worst pain he'd ever experienced, and it was more than just a physical pain. It was the sensation of having control of your body wrenched violently away from you. No, when you were hit by this blast of power, you waged a silent war in your mind, battling with the Lightbringers to wrest control and keep your mind and body. Some people were able to do so to some degree. There was a reason not every person that heard the sound turned into mindless monsters. Whether it was a strong will or some other unquantifiable quality, he wasn't certain, but he had endured it before and would again. That said, when it slammed into him, the pain was still tremendous. He gritted his teeth and pinched his eyes shut. In his mind, he felt the device's clawing darkness trying to reach inside and take away the controls, but Melias didn't take his hand off the wheel. With all the will and strength he could muster, he pushed back and kept the evil at bay. He would not allow his body to be taken away from him again. When he opened his eyes again, he released a gasp. His throat burned, and his body shook with exertion, as if he'd just run up 50 flights of stairs, and his body couldn't go a single step more. "That sucked," he wheezed, pitching forward, hands on his knees. His whole body felt impossibly heavy. He tried to rise, but found it was hard to move. It wasn't the same frustration as when he had first been affected by the device, when he lost control and watched from within as he tried to attack his friends. The feeling of his limbs and muscles were still with him. He had control, but they were heavy, bogged down by the exertion of the sound and the fight against it. Still, he was able to look around. Already he heard screams in the distance. A few of the techs at the repair shop had staggered out to gawk at the huge alien ship that had descended onto their planet. Of course, they had no defense against the device once the sound began. Before Melias could think to do anything, both techs screamed and dropped to their knees, clutching their ears. The younger one, a human man perhaps a few years Melias' junior, with sun-bronzed skin and a shock of bright blue hair that was slick with grease, stopped screaming first. When he rose, Melias was close enough to see that his eyes were still his own. The man's friend was not as lucky, though. This man, another human with paler skin and a balding head, rose menacingly from where he had crumbled, his limbs jerking and moving in an unnatural way that only spelled doom for the other. "Move away from him!" Melias shouted. His head still rang and pulsed with pain. He was able to withstand it due to his previous exposure, but he was still stunned. His arms felt too heavy, and his legs were cemented in place. He tried to raise his gun to take a shot at the turning man, but it wouldn't obey him. His muscles were locked with painful spasms. He could only